First story is titled, Am I the a-hole for telling my dad it's not my fault his family's broken and he should blame himself? I'm my dad's oldest child and his only child from his marriage to my mom. My mom was unable to have children after she had me, and my dad always wanted more. So he cheated and slept around, and eventually he and his current wife started an affair which came out when I was 12. She was 6 months pregnant when me and my mom learned the truth. She also had 3 kids already with a different guy or guys. He thought everything would be perfect from day one. He expected me to love his new wife and the other kids, and we would be a picture-perfect family. But I was pissed. Not gonna lie, and I didn't accept his wife or his kids or my half-brother when he was born, or for a long time after it. They would enforce family time, and it always sucked. One day, when I was 16, I told them I was there to see my dad, not play families or go along with the charade anymore. And we weren't a family, and I didn't give a crap about any of them except my dad. I think I also might have told him that he was number 1 on my crap list, but maybe I said that after he pulled me aside. I stopped going to his house after that, and there were no more attempts made at being a family. His wife's kids were super upset and extra pissed that I would dare deny them or not want to spend time with them. My dad and I have a rocky and mostly estranged relationship now. The last time we talked for real was 4 years ago when I graduated high school. But the other night, he showed up and told me it was all my fault, that everything was so broken because of what I said that day. He told me all he wanted was his family to be happy, but I wouldn't let it happen. I refused to let him blame me. So I told him it was not my fault. I was a kid who was thrown into a crappy situation after having her family broken up. I told him it was his fault and he should think about that. He tried to argue, so I said he was the cheating piece of ish who thought he could get everything he wanted. I told him it was dumb to expect me to love the woman he cheated with day one and jump up and down because she had kids. And that things rarely, if ever, work out that way when you create a family through cheating and humiliating someone, the way he humiliated my mom by bringing up her infertility. I finished by calling him a crappy person. Am I the a-hole? Did I go too far? Now for the top comments. Not the a-hole. Your father sounds self-centered and like one of those parents that piously tell themselves that they have a right to move on and find happiness, yet refuse to accept that they have no possible right to dictate how others feel. Your father wants you to go along with this game of happy families because, if you do, he can pat himself on the back and tell himself that he did nothing wrong, that it has all worked out for the best. By not playing along with the idea that you love his affair partner and her brood, you make it harder for him to pretend that his selfishness did not hurt you. Right? It's all about getting what he wants and making him look good. It's like all the hurt and pain he caused didn't matter if I was able and willing to embrace the mistakes he made and love the people he brought into my life through his crappy and messed up actions. Precisely. He is fighting against the idea that he did something wrong when he cheated on your mother and chose to put his desire to have additional children ahead of his responsibility to the child he already had. He wants you to tell him that you're happy and that you love his new family because that would allow him to tell himself that, ultimately, he did the right thing for everybody. You owe him nothing, least of all absolution. I think the worst thing about all, that is, even after it all exploded in his face and he lost me, he still doesn't want to try and fix his relationship with me. He just wants me to slide into the family he thinks he deserves and love, or even fake love them to make himself feel better. He doesn't care enough to put work into his relationship with me. Thankfully, I am in a much better place than when I was 16, but man, would it have broken me to know he would still not care about his relationship with me 6 years later. I would have been so heartbroken. Not the a-hole. He needs to take some personal responsibility if he wants a relationship with you. It's not even about this relationship with me. He still wants us to be one big happy Brady Bunch style blended family. More than anything, I think he wants to believe his wife and her kids and I would all try to have a relationship and that I would declare my love for them and say I didn't mean what I said when I was 16. Now for the next story. Am I the a-hole for not forcing my son to go meet his real dad after 11 years? My son's father has basically said since the moment I got pregnant that my boy is not his, even though DNA was determined. The courts forced him to pay child support versus terminating his rights. The only reason this happened was because he said some questionable crap to the judge and she became salty about it. Examples: why the hell do I have to pay for a kid I don't want? Or, no, I'm not paying for him. She should have terminated. This obviously pissed off everyone in the courtroom, and the judge immediately awarded child support in my favor to spite him, in my opinion. During this, I was actually asking that his rights be terminated, and I did not request child support of any kind. The judge went against what I wanted as well. For 9 years, he has paid $136 a month for child support. During the months of October through March, we have never received anything. That means he has a lot of back child support owed. I have never contacted the state about this, as I can do without his money. Well, apparently, CPS reached out to him with a notice stating that he owes over $12,000 in back child support. From what he claims, I didn't see the notice. They did not contact me. Somehow, he found my number and called me stating that he wants to have half custody of my son. He wants a week-on, week-off visitation established. When I asked him why, his response was, well, it'll drop my child support payments, and since I'm paying for him, I have rights to him, huh? I said no. That's no reason to want to be involved with my son after 11 years. If he had said, I just want to meet him, I'm ready to be a dad, I would have said yes. Despite me already saying no, I spoke to my son about it to see how he felt. He said that he didn't want to meet him right now. My ex continued to blow my phone up to say he was bringing me back to court, and that the judge would rule in his favor because he makes more money than I do. He doesn't know how much money I make, and this was a guess on his part. He says that I'm a dumpsy for denying him rights to his son. I think he is an ignorant a-hole for trying to use my son as a way to get out of child support, and that, if it weren't for that fact alone, he wouldn't want anything to do with him anyways. Am I the a-hole? Now for the top comments. Not the a-hole, obviously. Keep all texts and voice messages from him. This and lawyer up. Not the a-hole. Agreed with all of this. If he calls you again, get something to record the entire conversation with. Though, check to see what the laws in your area are regarding recording someone without their permission. Additionally, if you can afford it, I would get a psychologist or licensed therapist, one who has experience dealing with children in situations like this. And if they have courtroom experience, even better, to talk with your son about stuff like this. This way, you might be able to get an official letter or recommendation that you can submit to the courts to help solidify your case. Not the a-hole. By all means, go back to court. The judge will almost certainly increase child support dramatically if he's making so much money now, and slam the a-hole for blatantly trying to weaponize visitation. Also, $136 a month is like a slightly more expensive internet plan in the US. Definitely not enough to feed and clothe an 11-year-old. He needs to pay more. Not the a-hole. He's been missing a lot more than $136 a month if he's $12,000 in arrears. Joint custody doesn't always negate child support obligations. Sounds like he's just blowing smoke. If your son doesn't want to meet him and there is no visitation order in place, I wouldn't force him to visit. See, I didn't see this notice that he claims he got stating that he is $12,000 in arrears. So there's a good chance he is lying about it. Much like he does everything else. In the first 2 years of my son's life, he was supposed to be paying $380 a month because he owned part of his dad's business. I'm not sure when they lowered the payments when I didn't receive a notice about anything, but I'm assuming he either quit the job or went under the table to get them lowered the way he did. If you are in the US, they must be threatening to suspend his driver's license or another professional license. Or, where I live, you can't get a hunting license with child support in arrears in some counties. Oh boy, does it become a big deal then. Pretty much. We are in the US. He is super big into hunting and fishing, so that's probably the exact reason for all of this. Especially if he can't get a license with his child support arrears. Now for the last story. Am I the a-hole for canceling dinner plans to celebrate with my daughter because my stepson was upset? My daughter, 13, and stepson, 11, have not gotten along since my daughter moved in. She had previously lived with her mother, but I got default custody after her mother turned one of her 24-hour disappearing acts into a never-coming-back one. My daughter and stepson go to the same middle school and were both running for student council vice president. There was tension in the house, and my wife told my stepson that if he won, we could go out to celebrate. My daughter asked if this applied to her as well, since he wasn't her only competitor, and my wife said, of course. The campaign got pretty stressful for the both of them. Then the votes come in, and my daughter wins by 4 votes. However, because somehow the one person who ran for treasurer this year dropped out because of grades, my stepson was offered that position. He saw it as a really pitiful consolation prize and was angry that he had to take orders from my daughter. I felt very bad for my stepson, and he and his mother, who is also very type A, was very upset, even though of course my wife congratulated my daughter. My stepson refused to be comforted by the fact that older kids get more easily elected because they know more people, and his mother even offered to take her to her law office and give him some responsibilities, saying that was better experience than student council would ever be. My stepson then said, "Please tell me you're not going to rub it in my face by taking us to dinner now." My wife also looks really reluctant to go to dinner. I finally tell my daughter that we weren't going to be going to dinner because her stepbrother was very upset by the turn of events, and we need to take his feelings into consideration. And that I was impolite to gloat. That all happened Friday. My daughter ended up crying, and even now, Sunday night, she is still mad at all of us. Am I the a-hole? Now for the top comments. Yes, you're the a-hole. You broke a promise first of all, which while minor to us adults, is a huge deal to kids. And also, you showed your daughter that, even if incorrectly, you prefer your stepson to her. Ideally, you should have gone to dinner together like promised, and then had a separate outing for the stepson to console him after his loss. Your daughter is likely already reeling from her mother piecing out permanently, and her reaction is probably a combination of you going back on a promise and a residual hurt of being abandoned by a loved one. Wouldn't surprise me at least. She's your daughter. Make it up to her. Maybe even one-on-one with you and her doing something she loves to do. And your wife is an a-hole too. Her behaviors towards your daughter are questionable just from the post. She's an adult. Why was she sulking over keeping a promise to a kid, which was very simple, going to dinner together to celebrate? That shows your daughter that her stepmom doesn't care for her successes. That's a bad precedent to set. This was a real teaching moment to the stepson about being gracious in defeat. Instead, he taught his daughter that her achievements don't mean crap. I mean, this whole dynamic doesn't really sound like a cohesive family unit. It feels like a single mother with her son and a single father with his daughter living together. If the stepson was really that upset about it, but I'll reiterate, teaching moment for losing gracefully. Why couldn't Opie just go one-on-one with his daughter? Why does the whole thing have to be cancelled? So yeah, you're the a-hole, Opie. Exactly this. Why would you waste this opportunity to teach kids? You knew one of them would lose and one would be disappointed. This cannot be a surprise. Also, son will get 2 years of extra chances after his sis moves to high school. He should be pleased that she gets a go before graduating. He gets extra practice at other positions to make him a better committee member in the long run. Go to dinner and celebrate/commiserate. Daughter rubbing son's face in her win would be crappy, but it doesn't sound like that'll be a problem. The part about him being angry about having to take orders from his stepsister is icing on the cake. Maybe point out to him that it isn't taking orders, but a fun opportunity for the two of them to work together. This coupled with impolite to gloat and putting his feeling ahead of hers just reeks of good old-fashioned sexism. The daughter is learning her place, and that's a terrible lesson. You're the a-hole. Massive, massive, massive you're the a-hole. Your daughter worked her butt off to win the spot, and you let her whiny, jealous, sore loser stepbrother ruin the celebration for her accomplishment. You showed your daughter that her hard work and accomplishments mean nothing to you, and showed your stepson that throwing a fit will get him whatever the F he wants, no matter who it hurts. Terrible parenting. Absolute garbage. You have one and only one chance to fix this. You tell your daughter you messed up majorly, and you were incredibly sorry, and will try your best to not do things like that again, and that she now gets 2 dinners out, one to celebrate, and one as an apology. Then sit your wife and stepson down. Tell them both that every accomplishment deserves to be celebrated, and that all 3 of you owe your daughter an apology, and you will be taking her out for the 2 dinners. If they choose to apologize, they can go with you. If they refuse to apologize, they can keep their sore loser butts at home. Then, get in family therapy freaking ASAP. First, Opie definitely the a-hole. Second, this comment is a perfect response and I completely agree. Your poor daughter is dealing with so much right now, and you can't even recognize her for doing something as amazing as winning class vice president? That is disgusting.